a story about a first step. Back when I was at Union, I took a course on public speaking. Every week we had to memorize and recite a piece in front of everyone in the class. The professor worked with us in real time to loosen and strengthen our speaking voices as we did so. So, for example, I would recite a short section from my favorite Indigo Girls song. The professor had me do it while flapping my arms up and down, shaking my head back and forth with my mouth wide open. The point is to free up the body and voice and break through inhibition. Talk about vulnerability. Brene Brown would love it. I hated it. Okay, I loved it a little. The class bonded because we were doing such vulnerable stuff together, but our bond was jeopardized partway through the semester when one of my classmates, who was Black, recited a poem. Our professor, as he began to work with Scott, started referring to the poem as a rap. This poem was most assuredly not a rap. The longer Scott was up there, the more times the word rap came out of Professor Seaver's mouth. The more times it did, the squirmier I got. I'd learned enough about racism by this point to know how regularly Black cultural forms are unknown and misunderstood by white people. We often reduce such forms into simplistic, inaccurate categories. All spoken word or poetry is rap. Every Black choir performance is gospel. Every meal made by a Black chef is soul food. Right before our eyes, my classmate was being reduced to a one-dimensional person, a caricature even. His poetic recitation could be heard as a rap only because he was Black and the listener was white. I watched Scott's face for a sign of unease. I waited for him to correct our professor, but he never did, and I couldn't tell what he thought or felt. By the end of class, I felt like I'd participated in something gross. I was simultaneously terrified to do anything about it, knew I had to do something, and had no idea what that was. After a couple nights of restless sleep and countless conversations with friends, I reached out to Scott. I had prepared a speech. I don't know if it bothered you, but I was really bothered when Professor Seaver called your poem a rap. I'm not telling you to ask you what I should do. Since it made me uncomfortable, I feel like I need to talk to him. But I also realize this could put you in a weird position. So I'm not exactly asking for your permission, but I do feel like I need to make sure you'd be okay with that. My palms were sweaty. I talked way too fast. Scott looked at me. Go ahead, talk to him, he said. Just be clear with him, I didn't ask you to come, and you're not speaking for me. If you can do that, go for it. Of course, I secretly wish Scott would tell me not to say anything. But now I'd created a situation where I couldn't opt out. So I made an appointment. After another sleepless night, I sat down with Professor Seaver and told him what I'd noticed and why it had upset me. My palms were sweaty. I talked way too fast. As it turned out, we had a good conversation. He listened and understood. He was glad I'd brought it to his attention. He also deftly brought the incident up in class the following week and explained he'd made a mistake because of his own white limitations. He apologized to the whole class. He did this without singling Scott out or seemingly making it weird for him. Maybe he also talked to Scott one-on-one before that. I'm not sure. This was the first time in my life I enacted a behavior that meaningfully responded to a specific racist incident that I was part of. Looking back, I have to say it felt much harder than it seems like it should have. Nonetheless, this was a big growth step for me. I learned I could do a particular kind of hard thing despite how nervous race still made me. I learned I wouldn't die from doing that hard thing. I learned it even felt good to follow all the way through and do the hard thing. I experienced a chance for a more meaningful relationship with Scott because I didn't stay silent. I came through it all a slightly different person. Taking action nurtured my muscles for next time.